I, Publius Cornelius Scipio, nicknamed Africanus, had taken New Carthage and began the defeat of Carthage in Hispania. I had information that Hasdrubal Barca, based in Castulo, intended to depart to Italy, crossing the Pyrenees, and join the forces of Hannibal with his army. If this happened, the Republic would be practically condemned and there would be no longer a reason to continue fighting in Hispania. I had a new mission to defeat Hasdrubal Barca before he set off with his men. In 545, since the founding of Rome, we departed from Tarraco, heading to Castulo, straight to the Carthaginian army, straight to Hasdrubal, straight to claim my revenge. When Hasdrubal received news of our departure, he gathered his men and headed to the vicinity of Baecula, where he could prepare a better defense. What a shame he hadn't stayed in Castulo. He wouldn't have been able to use his elephants optimally, and we could have avoided suffering. It didn't matter if he wanted to fight in Baecula. Would we fight in Baecula? In less than 10 days, at a surprisingly fast pace, we reached the vicinity of the Carthaginian camp. By Jupiter, we should have surprised them. Such a distance usually took between 15 and 20 days to cover. We did it in half the time. The Velites, the light infantry of the legions, went ahead, separated from the main body of the army, scanning the horizon and preventing any possible ambush to the heavy infantry. In the distance, at the base of a hill, there was a large contingent of Carthaginian cavalry approaching at a pace. The horde continued to grow. There must have been hundreds of riders together when they launched into a trot towards my Velites. It was not something I had anticipated, nor something I sought. But if the Carthaginians wanted to fight, there would be combat. My officers insisted that I withdraw the Velites and send troops to protect them, but I knew that wasn't necessary. Those men trusted me and I trusted them. I knew they would give their lives for me, especially after what happened in Cartagena. The Velites would fight fiercely against the enemy cavalry. The Carthaginians were getting closer and closer until they galloped against my lines. The Velites had time to launch a salvo of javelins against the cavalry and quickly hid behind their small shields. The charge was thunderous, lethal. I have to admit that I thought I had made a mistake, that perhaps I should have withdrawn him, that my youthful impulsiveness had played a cruel trick on me. But the following minutes proved the exact opposite. The Velites regrouped, and thanks to their light equipment, they surrounded the Carthaginians and massacred them using their javelins as spears. We had the first victory of the conflict. Now was the time to analyze the Carthaginian positions. Again, another seemingly impregnable position that I had to attack. The Carthaginian camp sat atop a hill with two plateaus. It would be tough to scale the slopes that separated different plains, especially under a barrage of projectiles. Besides, in the middle of the plain was a river that we would also have to wade through. The good news was that up there the Carthaginian elephants would also be of no use, as there was little space to maneuver. The same was true for the cavalry. It was a good static defensive position, but not a good position for making large troop movements. Hasdrubal's army was made up of seasoned Carthaginian soldiers who could halt the advance of the legions. There was also Iberian infantry recruited from the tribes of the south and southeast of the peninsula. Lastly, there was cavalry, Numidian, and African war elephants. But, as I already said, they would not be of much use. Well, it was time to prepare a strategy, so I gathered my officers to deliberate how to take the enemy camp. Again, time was running against us. We knew that Hasdrubal had sent messengers to the other two Carthaginian armies on the peninsula to come to his aid. We had to finish with Hasdrubal soon. At dawn on day 2, I had my legionaries eat breakfast 2 hours early. Double ration, double energy. Before the Carthaginians woke up, we had formed in battle order and were advancing towards them. It was not my intention to attack them by surprise. I knew that was impossible. My intention was that they wouldn't have time for breakfast, that upon seeing us approach, they would quickly form, waiting for our arrival with empty stomachs. The sun and time would be an ally during that day. I ordered the advance of my Velites and my Astati through the center, with the mission of taking the first plateau. They advanced under the command of Sextus Digicus and Quintus Terribilius, both reputed officials and decorated with a Muralis crown. My princes and my triarii stayed on our side of the river so I could send them where I deemed necessary. Meanwhile, I sent Lucius Marcius and Mar Juventius with several maniples of princes and triarii to the Carthaginian rear. They were to prepare an ambush in case Hasdrubal withdrew. My Velites and my Hastati crossed the river and approached the slope that would lead them to the first of the plateaus. However, Hasdrubal had positioned his Balearic slingers, African light infantry, and cavalry at the top of the slope in humidity. It would be a tough climb. I vividly remember my men. The first attack from the slingers as they climbed the slope was terrifying. From my position, I could hear the buzzing of hundreds of rocks slicing through the air, the sound of bones breaking, and the cries of pain from my men as they were hit. Mixed in with the stones, javelins would rain down, also tearing, injuring, and killing my legionnaires in their arduous task of reaching the plateau. Finally, my men managed to climb up the plain and began to deal sword blows to the slingers. They swiftly retreated, unprepared for close quarters fighting. An increasing number of legionaries flooded the plateau, overwhelming the vulnerable Iberians. The slingers were replaced by light African infantry, which, although they were also unable to stop our advance, could make our task more difficult. Terribilio and Digicio reformed the Astati into a solid line of scarlet shields, while the Velites kept the Africans away. Once the shield wall was ready, they began to advance, overtaking the Velites and falling. Like a grinder on the Carthaginian light infantry, it was another demonstration of the power of Rome. In a few minutes, much of the first plateau had been cleared. In front of the helpless gaze of the Numidian cavalry, unable to charge due to limited space. In the next video, I will narrate the outcome of this battle and how Hasdrubal slipped away from me when I thought I had him. And the outcome of this battle would be a crucial key in the result of the Second Punic War. For if Hannibal had literally destroyed army after army that the Republic had sent against him, he could not. I did not want to imagine what would happen if he received the support of his brother Hasdrubal. If you want to know the context in which this battle took place, click on the video shown on screen and don't forget to hit like if you liked it. If you also want to know more about the history of Hispania and discover more battles, subscribe to the channel to stay updated on new videos.